Hey, welcome back. Let everything quiet down, and we'll ease into a slow tale from Norse mythology. Before there were gods, before there were giants, before there was land, sea, or sky, there was only absence. In Norse mythology, existence does not begin with light or order. It begins with a vast, echoing void, a yawning nothingness known as Ginnungagap. This was not emptiness in the modern sense, but a primordial gap, a cosmic silence stretched between opposing forces that had not yet collided. There was no time, no direction, no form, only potential. To the north of Ginnungagap lay Niflheim, a realm of bitter cold, mist, and eternal ice. Its air was heavy with frost, and from it flowed the Elvagar, venomous rivers that crept outward, freezing as they moved. To the south lay Muspelheim, a realm of fire, heat, and blinding light, guarded by flame and ruled by forces that embodied destruction and raw energy. These two realms existed independently, eternal, and opposed, long before the 9 realms took shape. For ages beyond counting, the cold breath of Niflheim drifted southward, while sparks and heat from Muspelheim surged north. Where these forces met in the heart of Ginnungagap, something unprecedented occurred. Ice began to melt. Vapors rose. Drops of life formed in the void. From this union of fire and ice emerged the first living being, Ymir. Ymir was not a god, nor a hero, nor a ruler. He was a primordial giant, vast beyond comprehension, born without intention or design. From his body came the earliest lineage of the Jotnar, the giants who would later oppose and intertwine with the gods. Ymir did not create the world consciously. He existed as a consequence, a living embodiment of imbalance made flesh. As Ymir slept, new beings emerged from him. From the sweat beneath his arms grew a male and a female giant. From his legs came another. Life multiplied without purpose, driven only by the raw forces that had birthed him. But Ymir was not alone. Alongside him emerged Audrumla, the great cosmic cow. From her udders flowed 4 rivers of milk, nourishing Ymir and sustaining him in the void. Audrumla herself fed by licking the salty ice blocks of Ginnungagap. With each passing day, her tongue revealed more beneath the frost. On the first day, hair appeared. On the second, a head. On the third, a full being stepped free from the ice. This was Buri, the first of the gods. Buri was beautiful, powerful, and ordered where Ymir was chaotic. He took a wife and fathered a son named Bor. Bor, in turn, had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These brothers would become the architects of the cosmos. Unlike Ymir, the sons of Bor did not merely exist. They observed, they planned, they acted. The growing presence of the giants, born endlessly from Ymir, threatened any chance of balance. Chaos was multiplying faster than order could take shape, so Odin and his brothers made a decision that would define all existence to follow. They killed Ymir. This was no simple act of violence, it was a cosmological event. When Ymir fell, his blood poured forth in such volume that it drowned nearly all the giants, leaving only a few survivors who would later inhabit Jotunheim. The slaying of Ymir was not framed as evil or heroic. It was necessary. From Ymir's body the world was made. His flesh became the earth. His blood became the seas and oceans. His bones rose as mountains. His teeth and shattered bones formed rocks and stones. His skull was lifted high and set as the sky, held aloft by 4 dwarves placed at the cardinal points, Northri, Suthri, Austri, and Vestri, whose names still echo in the directions we use today. With this act, Odin and his brothers transformed chaos into structure, but the cosmos was still incomplete. As they walked along the newly formed shoreline, the brothers found 2 lifeless tree trunks. From these they fashioned the first humans. Odin gave them breath and spirit. Vili gave them intelligence and movement. Ve gave them form, speech, and senses. They named them Ask and Embla. Humanity was not an afterthought. It was a deliberate creation, fragile, mortal, and placed between gods and giants, between order and chaos. Yet even with the shaping of the world, the cosmos required something more. It needed connection, memory, stability. That something was Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is often called the World Tree, but this title barely captures its significance. It was not simply a tree within the world, it was the structure that held the worlds together. An immense ash tree whose branches stretched into the heavens and whose roots plunged into the deepest realms of existence. The 9 realms were not stacked like floors, nor arranged like a map. They existed as regions bound to Yggdrasil, interconnected yet distinct, each with its own laws, inhabitants, and purpose. 3 great roots anchored Yggdrasil. One extended into Asgard, the realm of the gods, where it drew nourishment from the well of Urd. This well was tended by the Norns. Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, beings who shaped fate itself. They carved destinies, measured lives, and ensured that even the gods were bound by time and consequence. Each day, they watered Yggdrasil's roots with sacred waters and white clay, preserving the cosmic order. Another root reached into Jotunheim, touching the well of Mimir. Mimir was a being of immense wisdom, and his well contained knowledge of all that had been and all that could be. Odin sacrificed one of his eyes to drink from it, trading sight for understanding. This act reflects a core Norse belief: wisdom always comes at a cost. The third root descended into Niflheim, reaching the spring Hvergelmir. From it flowed the Elevia, the same rivers that existed before creation. Beneath this root gnawed Nithhogr, the great serpent or dragon, endlessly chewing at the tree's base. His role was not merely malicious. He represented decay, inevitability, and the slow erosion of all things. Yggdrasil was alive. Creatures moved across it constantly. The eagle perched at its highest branches, watching all realms. Between his eyes sat the hawk Veðurfólnir. The squirrel Ratatoskr ran up and down the trunk, carrying insults and messages between the eagle above and Nithhogr below, embodying miscommunication and unrest. Stags grazed on its leaves, their antlers dripping dew that fed the rivers of Midgard. This constant motion reflected the Norse understanding of the universe. Balance is not static. It is maintained through tension, decay, renewal, and struggle. The 9 realms were born into this living system. They were not equal, nor were they moralized as good or evil. Each realm served a function: fire and ice, life and death, order and chaos, creation and destruction. Importantly, the Norse cosmos was never permanent. From the moment Yggdrasil took root, it was already under threat. Nithhogr gnawed below. The stags stripped its leaves. Time wore at its bark. Even the gods knew that one day the tree would tremble. This impermanence shaped every legend that followed. Unlike mythologies that promise eternal stability or final salvation, Norse mythology accepts that all things, even gods, will end. The 9 realms exist within a cycle, not a destination. And yet, within that acceptance lies resilience. Because though Ragnarök would one day come, though Yggdrasil would shudder and burn, something would survive. Seeds, memory, renewal. The legends of the 9 realms are not just stories of places. They are reflections of how the Norse people understood existence itself: harsh, beautiful, fleeting, and meaningful, precisely because it does not last. With the cosmos formed, the roots set, and the realms bound together by the world tree, the stage was prepared. The gods would rise, humans would struggle, giants would challenge, fate would tighten its threads. And all of it would unfold beneath the branches of Yggdrasil. This is where the journey truly begins. High above the lands of mortals, beyond the reach of ordinary sight and fragile human steps, lies Asgard, the stronghold of the Aesir gods. Asgard is not simply a place in the sky, nor a distant planet or mountain peak. In Norse mythology, it is a realm woven into the branches of Yggdrasil itself. bound to the cosmic structure that holds all worlds together. It exists close enough to Midgard for the gods to watch humanity, yet far enough removed to remain inaccessible except through divine means. Asgard is order made visible. Where Ginnungagap was silence, and the early cosmos was raw force, Asgard represents intention. It is a realm shaped by planning, hierarchy, and purpose, a place where power is organized rather than chaotic, where decisions ripple outward across all 9 realms. The Aesir who dwell here are not distant, flawless beings. They are fallible, emotional, and bound by fate. Asgard is not a paradise free of fear or loss. It is a fortified realm built in the full knowledge that one day it will fall. Asgard is described in the surviving sources not with precise measurements, but with symbolic clarity. It is elevated, fortified, and radiant. Its halls are vast, its walls imposing, its gates guarded. This is a realm designed for defense, not against mortals, but against giants, monsters, and the eventual chaos foretold by prophecy. At the heart of Asgard stand the great halls of the gods. These are not simple dwellings, but centers of power, feasting, counsel, and judgment. Each hall reflects the nature of the god who inhabits it, reinforcing the idea that identity and environment are inseparable in Norse thought. Asgard is connected to Midgard by Bifrost, the great bridge of shimmering light. Often described as a rainbow, Bifrost is both pathway and barrier. It allows the gods to travel to the human world, but it is fiercely guarded and cannot be crossed freely. The watchman Heimdall stands vigil at its edge, seeing and hearing all that approaches. His senses are so sharp that nothing escapes his notice, a reminder that access to divine power is never unguarded. Bifrost is also fragile. Despite its brilliance, it is foretold that the bridge will shatter during Ragnarök under the weight of invading forces. Even the most beautiful structures in the Norse cosmos are temporary. Among Asgard's many halls, none is more famous than Valhalla. Valhalla is not the destination of all who die. It is reserved for a specific kind of dead, warriors who fall in battle with courage and honor. These chosen dead are gathered by the Valkyries, female figures who serve Odin, riding across battlefields to select those deemed worthy. The warriors brought to Valhalla are known as the Einherjar. Inside Valhalla, the Einherjar do not rest in eternal peace. Instead, they train. Each day, they fight one another in endless combat, sharpening their skills for the final battle of Ragnarök. Each evening, they are restored, their wounds healed, and they feast together in Odin's hall. This afterlife reflects a central Norse value. Death is not an escape from struggle. It is a continuation of duty. Valhalla's roof is said to be made of shields. Spears serve as rafters. The great boar Saehrimnir is slaughtered each night and reborn each morning to feed the warriors. Mead flows endlessly from the goat Heidrun, whose milk fills vast cauldrons. These images are not indulgent fantasies. They are symbolic reinforcements of identity. The ideal warrior does not long for rest. He longs for readiness. Yet Valhalla is not the only afterlife connected to Asgard. Some of the fallen are taken instead to Folkvanger, the field of the goddess Freya. The division between these destinations is not fully explained in surviving sources, reminding us that Norse belief was not a rigid system, but a living tradition with regional variation. At the center of Asgard's authority stands Odin. Odin is not a king by brute strength alone. He is a god of wisdom, sacrifice, poetry, war, and death. His power lies in knowledge, often gained through suffering. Odin sacrificed his eye at the well of Mimir to gain deeper understanding of the cosmos. He hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, in order to gain the knowledge of runes. These acts define him. Wisdom is never free. In Asgard, Odin rules not as a tyrant, but as a strategist. He gathers information constantly, sending his ravens Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, across the 9 realms each day. They return at night to whisper what they have seen. Despite his power, Odin is haunted by foresight. He knows Ragnarök is coming. He knows many of the gods, including himself, will die. Much of Asgard's activity is shaped by preparation for this inevitable end. If Odin represents foresight, Thor represents protection. Thor is the primary defender of Asgard and Midgard alike. Wielding the hammer Mjolnir, forged by dwarves, Thor stands as a barrier against giants and monstrous threats. His strength is immense, but it is his reliability that defines him. He acts where others plan. Thor's presence in Asgard reinforces the realm's militarized nature. This is not a place of idle luxury. It is a fortress constantly under threat. Thor travels frequently between realms, especially to Jotunheim, where conflict with the giants is ongoing. These clashes are not merely personal rivalries, they are expressions of cosmic balance. Without opposition, order stagnates. Asgard is not ruled by Odin alone. Frigg, Odin's wife, is associated with foresight, motherhood, and protection. Though quieter in the myths, her influence is profound. She knows many fates, but speaks them rarely, embodying restraint. Tyr, an older god of law and justice, sacrificed his hand to bind the wolf Fenrir. This act defines the Aesir's willingness to accept loss for the sake of stability. Balder, beloved by all, represents light, purity, and harmony. His death, brought about through deception and inevitability, marks the beginning of the end for Asgard. It proves that even the most cherished aspects of the cosmos are vulnerable. Loki, though often grouped with the Aesir, exists uneasily within Asgard. He is a shapeshifter, a trickster, and a source of disruption. His cleverness aids the gods as often as it harms them. Over time, his role shifts from nuisance to threat, mirroring the thin line between chaos contained and chaos unleashed. Despite looming prophecy, life in Asgard continues. The gods gather in councils, feast together, argue, scheme, and reflect. They are immortal, but not timeless. They experience fear, joy, jealousy, and regret. Asgard is not a realm of constant war. It is a place of preparation, where stories are told, alliances formed, and meaning constructed in the face of inevitable destruction. This is perhaps the most human aspect of the Aesir. They do not deny the end, they prepare for it. Though Asgard stands as the pinnacle of order, it is never portrayed as eternal. Its walls can be breached, its bridges can fall, its gods can die. This fragility is not weakness, it is honesty. In Norse mythology, even the highest power exists within limits. Fate binds all beings, gods included. Asgard's greatness lies not in its permanence, but in its defiance. It stands tall, knowing it will one day collapse. As the 9 realms continue to unfold, Asgard serves as both command center and cautionary tale, a reminder that authority, wisdom, and strength do not grant escape from consequence. From Asgard, the gaze of the gods turns outward, toward Midgard, toward the giants, toward the slow tightening of fate. And beneath the ever-branching limbs of Yggdrasil, the story moves on, below the halls of the gods, and far from the frozen edges of creation lies Midgard, the realm of humankind. Midgard is not the largest of the 9 realms, nor the most powerful. It does not glitter like Asgard or burn like Muspelheim. And yet, within Norse mythology, Midgard holds a unique and fragile importance. It is the world of struggle, choice, and consequence. A place where meaning is earned through effort, and where life is measured not by immortality, but by what one does before the end arrives. Midgard exists within the branches of Yggdrasil, suspended between higher and lower realms. This placement is deliberate. Humans are neither divine nor monstrous. They live between forces far greater than themselves, shaped by fate, but not entirely powerless beneath it. The origins of Midgard are inseparable from the creation of humanity itself. After shaping the world from the body of Ymir, Odin and his brothers walked along the newly formed shoreline. There, they found two pieces of driftwood, lifeless, weathered, and ordinary. From these, they created the first humans. The male was named Ask, formed from an ash tree. The female was named Embla, formed from an elm. Each god gave a gift. Odin gave breath and spirit, the animating force that separates the living from the dead. Vili granted intelligence and the ability to think and move with intention. Ve bestowed form, speech, hearing, and sight, the tools through which humans would interact with the world. Humanity was not forged from divine blood or stone, but from wood, flexible, mortal, and vulnerable to decay. This origin reflects a core Norse belief. Humans are part of nature, not above it. Midgard was shaped to house these new beings. The gods raised mountains, set rivers in motion, and defined the land. They placed humanity within boundaries, knowing that without limits, chaos would consume fragile life. Midgard is famously encircled by Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, one of Loki's monstrous children. This great serpent was cast into the sea that surrounds the human world. There, it grew so vast that it eventually wrapped itself entirely around Midgard, grasping its own tail. This image is rich with meaning. Jormungandr is both protector and threat. By encircling the world, it defines Midgard's boundaries, keeping the seas contained. Yet its presence is also a reminder of looming destruction. At Ragnarök, the serpent will release its tail, rise from the ocean, and poison sky and land alike. Midgard, then, exists within a fragile circle, protected but never truly safe. Unlike many mythological systems where gods remain distant, the Norse gods are deeply involved in human affairs. Odin wanders Midgard in disguise, seeking knowledge and testing hospitality. Thor protects human settlements from giants and monsters, his hammer blessing homes and marriages. Frey and Freya influence fertility, harvests, love, and prosperity. Yet the gods do not intervene constantly. Humans are expected to endure hardship largely on their own. Divine aid is possible, but never guaranteed. This uncertainty reinforces a worldview built on resilience rather than reliance. The gods watch Midgard closely because humanity plays a role in the cosmic story. Humans will fight alongside the gods at Ragnarök. Their courage, loyalty, and suffering matter. Central to life in Midgard is the concept of fate. The Norns weave destiny for gods and humans alike. No one escapes their threads. A person's lifespan, struggles, and death are shaped by forces beyond their control. But fate in Norse mythology is not passive resignation. While the end is fixed, the manner in which one meets it is not. Honor, courage, generosity, and loyalty define a person's worth. A good death is not one that is avoided, but one that is faced well. This belief shaped every aspect of Norse culture, from warfare to law to storytelling. Heroes are celebrated not because they survive, but because they act rightly in the face of inevitable loss. Midgard is harsh. The land is cold, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Storms destroy crops. Winters starve communities. Disease and violence are ever-present threats. This environment is not incidental. It reinforces the idea that life is struggle, comfort is fleeting, strength must be earned daily. In the myths, Midgard is rarely described as beautiful in the way Asgard or Helheim are. Its beauty lies in endurance, in the quiet persistence of human life against overwhelming odds. Unlike the gods, humans are not immortal. Every decision carries weight. Betrayal has consequences. Cowardice stains memory. Generosity builds legacy. Reputation outlives the body. This is why names matter so deeply in Norse storytelling. To be remembered is a form of survival. To die forgotten is the greatest loss. Skalds, poets, and storytellers preserve these memories. Through spoken word, human lives echo beyond death, woven into the same mythic fabric as gods and monsters. Midgard does not exist in isolation. Giants cross into it, gods descend into it, spirits influence it, the dead watch from beyond it. The human world is a crossroads, a meeting place of forces that originated long before humanity and will continue long after it. This constant interaction explains why Midgard is never fully stable. Peace is temporary. Threats return. Balance must be maintained again and again. When Ragnarök arrives, Midgard will not be spared. The seas will rise, the sky will darken, fire and frost will tear the land apart. Humans who fight bravely may stand beside the gods, others will perish in the chaos. Yet even after destruction, humanity does not vanish entirely. Two humans, Lif and Yggdrasil, are said to survive, hidden within the shelter of Yggdrasil. From them, the world will be repopulated. This detail is crucial. It confirms that Midgard, though fragile, is essential. Humanity is not a temporary experiment, it is a recurring presence within the cosmic cycle. Midgard is the only realm where death defines existence. Gods fear death, giants resist it, but humans live with it constantly. And in that awareness, meaning emerges. The Norse myths do not promise salvation, paradise, or escape. They promise struggle, loss, and an ending. But they also promise that courage matters, that loyalty matters, that how one lives, even briefly, can ripple outward across realms. Midgard is the stage upon which this truth is proven. Beneath the watchful eyes of the gods, within the coils of the world's serpent, humanity endures fragile, defiant, and unforgettable. And as the branches of Yggdrasil stretch overhead, the human story continues, bound tightly to every realm above and below. Beyond the guarded bridges of the gods and far from the fragile settlements of humankind lies Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Jotunheim is not a wasteland of mindless monsters. It is a vast, ancient land shaped by raw nature, deep time, and forces that existed long before the gods raised their halls in Asgard. In Norse mythology, Jotunheim represents the untamed world, mountains that do not yield, forests that do not end, storms that do not ask permission. If Asgard is order and Midgard is endurance, Jotunheim is inevitability. The giants who dwell here, known as the Jotnar, are not uniformly evil, nor are they merely obstacles for heroic tales. They are primordial beings tied to the earliest moments of creation. Some are wise, some are cruel, many are indifferent. Together they embody the forces that resist control. The lineage of the Jotnar begins with Ymir, the first living being born from the meeting of fire and ice. From his body came the earliest giants, multiplying without design or restraint. Unlike the gods, who would later impose structure, the giants emerged as expressions of raw existence. Even after Ymir's death and the drowning of most of his kin, the giants did not vanish. Survivors rebuilt, adapted, and continued their bloodlines deep within Jotunheim. Their persistence reinforces a core Norse idea. Chaos cannot be eliminated, only contained. Many giants predate the gods themselves. Others are contemporaries. Some even become ancestors of gods through marriage and union, blurring the boundary between enemy and kin. Jotunheim is described as vast and inhospitable. Its mountains are steep and ancient. Its valleys are deep and shadowed. Rivers carve through stone, and forests stretch without paths. Cold dominates much of the land, but fire, storm, and darkness also claim territory. This environment is not incidental. It shapes the giants who live within it. Where Asgard's halls are built and maintained, Jotunheim's terrain resists permanence. Structures crumble, paths disappear. Survival depends on strength, cunning, or endurance. In this realm, civilization is not central, nature is. The Jotnar are often best understood not as villains but as personifications. Some giants embody winter, storms, earthquakes, or the sea. Others represent hunger, age, or destruction. Their conflicts with the gods mirror humanity's struggle against the natural world. Floods, cold, famine, and death. Yet giants are not mindless. Many possess deep wisdom, some hold knowledge older than the gods themselves. Odin frequently seeks counsel from giants, traveling into Jotunheim to learn secrets he cannot find in Asgard. This dynamic is critical. The gods rely on the giants even as they oppose them. Order depends on understanding chaos. Jotunheim is home to many notable figures whose actions shape the 9 realms. One of the most significant is Mimir, whose wisdom surpasses that of nearly any other being. Though later associated with Asgard, Mimir's origins tie him to the giants. His well, located in Jotunheim, contains knowledge of the past, present, and possible futures. Angerboda, a giantess of Jotunheim, becomes the mother of Loki's most fearsome children, Fenrir the wolf, Jormungandr the world serpent, and Hel, ruler of the dead. Through her, Jotunheim's influence extends into every corner of the cosmos. Thrym, a giant king, attempts to steal Thor's hammer Mjolnir, believing that without it the gods will be powerless. This myth underscores the constant tension between Asgard and Jotunheim, a struggle not for domination, but for balance. Despite frequent conflict, the relationship between gods and giants is not purely adversarial. Odin himself descends from giants through his mother, Besla. Many gods take giantesses as lovers or wives. These unions produce powerful offspring and reinforce the idea that creation arises from contrast. The gods do not seek to destroy Jotunheim completely. To do so would destabilize the cosmos. Instead, they manage its threats, contain its dangers, and occasionally draw strength from it. This uneasy coexistence mirrors a broader truth. Civilization cannot exist without the wild, but it also cannot survive if the wild overtakes it entirely. No god is more closely associated with conflict against the giants than Thor. Thor's journeys into Jotunheim are frequent and violent. Armed with Mjolnir, he confronts giants directly, smashing mountains and reshaping landscapes in his wake. These encounters are not simply battles of strength. They are symbolic clashes between order and chaos. Thor does not eradicate the giants, he holds them back. Each victory is temporary. Each defeat foreshadows Ragnarök, when restraint will finally fail. The giants are deeply tied to prophecy. Many of the beings who will bring about Ragnarök originate in Jotunheim. Fenrir will break his bonds, Jormungandr will rise from the sea. Fire and frost will march together. Jotunheim is not merely a place of threat, it is the source of endings. But endings in Norse belief are not meaningless, they are transitions. Without Jotunheim there is no renewal. Jotunheim exists to challenge. It tests the strength of the gods, the courage of heroes, and the resilience of humanity. It prevents stagnation and exposes weakness. In this way, the giants are not villains in the modern sense, they are necessary. The Norse cosmos does not reward comfort, it rewards preparedness. Jotunheim ensures that no realm becomes complacent. As the story of the 9 realms unfolds, Jotunheim remains ever-present, looming at the edges of order, waiting patiently for the moment when restraint gives way. And beneath the shadowed branches of Yggdrasil the giants endure, ancient and unyielding, bound to the fate of all worlds. Beyond the fortified order of Asgard and the wild inevitability of Jotunheim lies a realm shaped by different priorities, different values, and a different understanding of power. This is Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods. Vanaheim is not a land of towering walls or endless battlefields. It is a realm rooted in growth, exchange, and continuity. Where the Aesir govern through authority, law, and preparation for war, the Vanir influence the rhythms that make life possible in the first place. Fertility, abundance, the turning of seasons, prosperity drawn from land and sea. These are the currents that flow through Vanaheim. In Norse mythology, the Vanir are no less divine than the Aesir, but they represent a contrasting philosophy. Their power is quieter, cyclical rather than confrontational, and deeply entwined with the natural world. Without them, survival would be hollow. Without them, even victory would be meaningless. Jotunheim's exact location within the branches of Yggdrasil is never clearly fixed in surviving sources, and that ambiguity is telling. This is not a realm defined by borders or fortifications. It exists wherever fertility takes hold, wherever exchange replaces conquest, wherever harmony is pursued instead of dominance. The Vanir are often described collectively rather than individually, suggesting a more communal identity. They are associated with agriculture, weather favorable to crops, fishing, wealth, peace, and the generative forces that sustain societies over time. Their magic differs from that of the Aesir. While Odin and his kin seek knowledge through sacrifice, suffering, and control, the Vanir practice a form of magic tied to foresight, influence, and shaping outcomes gently rather than forcefully. This magic, known as Seidr, allows one to perceive fate, alter probabilities, and guide events without direct confrontation. This distinction becomes crucial later, when the boundaries between Aesir and Vanir begin to blur. The relationship between Asgard and Jotunheim was not always cooperative. In the distant mythic past, the two divine groups came into conflict in a war that reshaped the balance of the 9 realms. The sources do not agree on what sparked the war, and this uncertainty reflects the nature of myth itself. Some accounts suggest distrust. Others point to cultural differences, or to grievances over the treatment of Vanir envoys among the Aesir. What is clear is that this was not a brief skirmish. The war between the Aesir and the Vanir was long, costly, and evenly matched. Neither side could claim decisive victory. The gods hurled weapons and magic across realms, fortresses were damaged, and divine blood was spilled. This stalemate carries meaning. It demonstrates that neither philosophy, pure order, nor pure fertility is sufficient on its own. Power divided against itself weakens the cosmos. Eventually, the war ended not through annihilation, but through negotiation. To seal their peace, the Aesir and Vanir agreed to exchange hostages. This act transformed the divine landscape. From Jotunheim came Njord and his children, Freyr and Freya. From Asgard came other gods whose identities are less clearly preserved, but whose presence in Jotunheim symbolized trust. The exchange was not symbolic alone. It was practical. By integrating Vanir gods into Asgard, the Aesir gained access to forms of wisdom and magic they had previously lacked. By hosting Aesir gods, the Vanir acknowledged the need for structure and defense. The peace that followed was not the erasure of difference, but its integration. Njord, a Vanir god associated with the sea, wind, fishing, and prosperity, became a vital presence among the Aesir. He governs the forces that allow trade, travel, and survival along coasts and waterways. Calm seas bring wealth. Favorable winds carry ships home. Njord's domain reflects a reality familiar to Norse societies. Prosperity does not come only from conquest, it comes from cooperation with nature. His uneasy marriage to the giantess Skadi further illustrates the tension between realms. Njord longs for the sound of waves and seabirds, while Skadi prefers the silence of mountains and snow. Their inability to reconcile these preferences mirrors the difficulty of balancing opposing worlds. Freyr, Njord's son, embodies fertility in its most tangible form. He is associated with rain, sunshine, fertile soil, good harvests, and peace. His presence ensures that fields grow, livestock thrive, and communities endure. Freyr's power is not dramatic, but it is essential. Without him, life withers. His eventual sacrifice of his magical sword, given away for love, carries deep symbolic weight. In choosing connection over weaponry, Freyr secures prosperity in the present while sealing his fate at Ragnarök, where he will face the fire giant Surtr unarmed. This is not portrayed as foolishness. It is portrayed as cost. Freya, daughter of Njord and sister of Freyr, is among the most complex figures in Norse mythology. She governs love, desire, fertility, beauty, and wealth, but also death and magic. Half of the warriors slain in battle are said to go to her field, Folkvanger, rather than Valhalla. Freya is the foremost practitioner of Seidr, the Vanir magic that allows one to see and influence fate. It is she who teaches this art to Odin, fundamentally altering the power structure of Asgard. This exchange is profound. The Aesir king learns magic rooted not in domination, but in perception and subtlety. In doing so, he accepts practices once considered foreign and even shameful. Freya's presence underscores a central theme of Vanaheim, adaptability. Though Vanaheim is a divine realm, its influence is felt most strongly in Midgard. Fertility rites, seasonal festivals, prayers for rain, good harvests, safe childbirth, and prosperous trade all echo the Vanir worldview. These practices connect humans directly to cycles larger than individual lives. Where Asgard prepares for the end, Vanaheim ensures continuity until that end arrives. This balance matters. A world obsessed only with battle would collapse from hunger. A world focused only on growth would be defenseless. The 9 realms require both. After the war and the exchange of hostages, the Vanir do not vanish into the background. Their values become woven into the divine order. Seidr reshapes prophecy. Fertility and prosperity become recognized as powers equal to warfare and law. The peace between Aesir and Vanir is one of the few lasting resolutions in Norse mythology. It stands as proof that even among gods, survival sometimes depends not on victory but on compromise. Vanaheim does not dominate myths through constant conflict, but through quiet necessity. It represents what must endure between crises. Fields must be planted. Children must be born, wealth must circulate, life must continue even when the end is known. In this way, Vanaheim is deeply human. It accepts impermanence, yet invests fully in the present. As Ragnarök approaches in later legends, the influence of the Vanir does not fade. Even in a doomed cosmos, growth retains meaning. Beneath the vast branches of Yggdrasil, while gods scheme and giants wait, the rhythms of Vanaheim continue, steady, patient, and essential, reminding every realm that existence is not sustained by strength alone, but by the will to nurture what still lives. There is a realm within the 9 that rarely announces itself through war, prophecy, or catastrophe. It does not thunder like Asgard, burn like Muspelheim, or brood like Jotunheim. Instead, it lingers at the edge of perception, half seen and half felt. This is Alfheim, the realm of the light elves. Alfheim is associated with brightness, clarity, and quiet vitality. In the surviving Norse sources, it is described sparingly yet with reverence. Its elusiveness is part of its nature. Alfheim does not dominate the myths through spectacle. It influences them through presence, subtle, persistent, and deeply tied to life itself. The light elves, known as Gjosalfar, are beings of beauty and radiance. They are not gods, yet they are more than spirits. They occupy a liminal space between the divine and the natural world, acting as intermediaries between realms and forces that humans can sense but rarely understand. Alfheim's placement within Yggdrasil is never fixed with certainty, and this ambiguity is meaningful. The realm is said to exist close to Asgard, suggesting kinship with the gods, but its influence reaches downward into Midgard through growth, light, and unseen guidance. Alfheim does not rule from above, it nurtures from within. In Norse cosmology, light is not merely illumination, it is vitality. It is the difference between dormancy and growth, between stagnation and renewal. Alfheim embodies this principle. The Ljosalfar are described as beings of exceptional fairness, shining more brightly than the sun in some accounts. This description is symbolic rather than literal. Their light represents harmony, health, and balance. Unlike the Jotnar, who challenge the gods openly, or the Aesir, who shape fate through authority, the Light Elves influence the world indirectly. Their presence is felt in fertile land, healthy growth, and moments of natural harmony. They are not warriors, nor are they passive observers. They act through alignment rather than force. This aligns them closely with the Vanir worldview. Both emphasize continuity, fertility, and cycles rather than conquest or domination. In this way, Alfheim serves as a bridge between divine intention and natural expression. Alfheim is said to have been given to Freyr as a gift during his childhood. This detail is brief in the sources, yet profound in implication. Freyr, a Vanir god associated with fertility, prosperity, and peace, is uniquely suited to oversee a realm defined by growth and light. Under Freyr's influence, Alfheim becomes not a seat of power, but a source of blessing. It radiates outward, influencing crops, seasons, and the quiet well-being of the world. This association reinforces a key Norse idea: rulership does not always mean command, sometimes it means stewardship. The Ljósálfar are deeply entwined with the rhythms of nature. In later folklore, elves become associated with fields, forests, hills, and unseen places where the land itself feels alive. While these later traditions evolve beyond the original Norse sources, they echo an older belief that nature is not inert. Growth is guided, balance is maintained. Life responds to unseen hands. In this sense, Alfheim represents the invisible architecture of the living world. The processes that allow seeds to sprout, wounds to heal, and ecosystems to sustain themselves are attributed not to chance, but to the quiet work of beings aligned with light. Humans rarely enter Alfheim directly in Norse myth. Instead, interaction occurs indirectly through reverence, taboo, and ritual. Offerings to land spirits, respect for natural boundaries, and seasonal observances reflect an awareness that the world is shared with forces unseen. To anger the elves is to invite imbalance. To respect them is to live in harmony with one's surroundings. This belief reinforces a moral framework rooted not in fear of punishment, but in reciprocity. The land gives when it is honored. Though Alfheim is associated with light and growth, it is not immune to fate. Like all realms, it exists within the larger cycle that leads toward Ragnarök. Its beauty is temporary. Its influence, however, is lasting. Even as destruction looms in the myths, the processes Alfheim represents do not cease. Life continues until it cannot. Growth persists until it is undone. This persistence is itself meaningful. Alfheim does not deny the end. It fills the time before it with life. The light elves are often contrasted with darker beings in later traditions, but within Norse mythology itself, this division is less moral and more functional. Light is associated with growth and vitality, darkness with decay and stillness. Neither is inherently evil. Alfheim exists to counterbalance the forces of stagnation without attempting to erase them. It ensures that creation does not collapse inward too soon. Alfheim reminds the listener that not all power announces itself loudly. Some forces sustain rather than conquer. Some realms matter not because they dominate stories, but because without them, no story could continue. In the 9 realms, Alfheim is easy to overlook. Yet without light, nothing grows. Without growth, no harvest comes. Without harvest, Midgard starves, Asgard weakens, and the cosmic balance fails. Alfheim holds the thread that binds vitality to existence itself. Beneath the wide-reaching limbs of Yggdrasil, as gods prepare and giants wait, the quiet influence of Alfheim persists, unseen, steady, and essential, ensuring that life continues for as long as fate allows. Beneath the visible worlds, far from sunlight and open sky, lies a realm shaped not by growth or conquest, but by craft. This is Svartalfheim, also known in many sources as Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves. Svartalfheim is not a place of sweeping landscapes or grand halls meant for spectacle. It is a hidden world of stone, metal, fire, and shadow. Caverns stretch deep beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. Forges glow where no natural light reaches. The air is heavy with heat, smoke, and the sound of relentless labor. In Norse mythology, the dwarves are the great makers. Where gods rule and giants challenge, dwarves create. Their power does not come from strength or prophecy, but from mastery, the ability to bind fate into objects, to give physical form to forces that shape the 9 realms. The dwarves originate from the same primordial moment that shaped much of the cosmos. After the death of Ymir, when his flesh became the world and his blood the seas, creatures began to form within his body. In some accounts, dwarves emerged from maggots that fed upon Ymir's corpse, transformed by the gods into thinking beings. This origin is deliberately uncomfortable. It ties dwarves directly to decay, transformation, and the raw matter of creation. Unlike the gods, dwarves are not born into power. They earn it through skill. Their small stature is misleading. Their influence reaches into every realm. Svartalfheim exists almost entirely underground. It is a realm of stone corridors, hidden vaults, molten rivers, and echoing chambers. Fire is ever present, not as destruction, but as a tool. Metal is shaped, folded, quenched, and reborn. This environment reflects dwarven values. There is little room for excess. Everything serves a purpose. Beauty exists, but it is functional. Ornamentation strengthens rather than decorates. Svartalfheim does not welcome outsiders easily. Its pathways shift. Its entrances are concealed. Knowledge of the realm is closely guarded. Dwarves are neither benevolent nor malicious by default. They are pragmatic. They honor bargains. They punish deception. They remember slights. When gods seek their help, it is often through coercion, trickery, or desperate need. Loki, in particular, frequently interacts with dwarves, sometimes with disastrous consequences. The relationship between gods and dwarves is transactional. Creation always comes at a cost. Many of the most important objects in Norse mythology originate in Svartalfheim. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, is forged by the dwarven brothers Brokr and Sindri. Though flawed in appearance due to interference during its creation, it becomes the most fearsome weapon in the cosmos, capable of leveling mountains and always returning to Thor's hand. Gungnir, Odin's spear, is perfectly balanced and never misses its mark. Draupnir, Odin's ring, multiplies itself every 9 nights, symbolizing abundance and inevitability. Sif's golden hair, Freyr's ship Skidbladnir, and Freyr's boar Gullinbursti all emerge from dwarven forges. These objects are not mere tools. They are extensions of fate itself. Through dwarven craft, abstract forces become tangible. Dwarven gifts often come with consequences. Mjolnir's short handle, caused by Loki's interference, forces Thor to rely on strength rather than finesse. Freyr's surrender of his magical sword, itself a dwarven creation, leaves him vulnerable at Ragnarök. These flaws are not accidents. They reflect a Norse understanding that perfection is neither attainable nor desirable. Every creation carries limitation. Dwarves understand this truth better than most. They work with what exists, not what is ideal. Dwarves possess a unique relationship with destiny. They do not weave fate like the Norns, nor do they defy it like heroes. Instead, they embed fate into matter. When a weapon is forged, its future is shaped. When an artifact is given, a chain of events is set in motion. This makes dwarves dangerous allies. Their creations endure long after their makers fade from the story. Without dwarves, the gods would be powerless. Their weapons would not exist. Their symbols of authority would remain unformed, their plans would lack tools. Yet dwarves themselves do not seek dominion. They remain below, working unseen, shaping outcomes without standing in the light. This is their strength. Creation without recognition. Labor without glory. In the 9 realms, Svartalfheim represents the unseen foundation beneath all visible power. As Ragnarök approaches in later myths, the works of dwarves play their final roles. Weapons strike true, artifacts fail or endure as intended. The dwarves do not escape the end, but their creations carry meaning beyond it. Beneath the deepest roots of Yggdrasil, in halls of stone and fire, the dwarves continue their work. shaping a world that rarely acknowledges how much it depends on their hands. At the rim of the known worlds, where warmth becomes a memory and sound seems to fade before it can travel, lies Niflheim. It is easy to imagine this realm as merely cold, but in Norse mythology, Niflheim is something older and deeper than weather. It is the first chill, the original stillness, the ancient breath that existed before creation had a shape. Niflheim is not a kingdom built after the world was formed. It is one of the foundations the world was built upon. Before the 9 realms were named, before Yggdrasil rose and spread its limbs across existence, there was Ginnungagap, the great yawning gap. Not a place, exactly, but a vast openness where nothing had boundaries yet. On one side of this emptiness burned Muspelheim, fierce and bright, a realm of heat and sparks. On the other side waited Niflheim, dim with mist and heavy with frost. And between them, the void held its breath. Niflheim is described through sensations more than landmarks. It is fog that clings to everything. It is ice that forms without effort. It is silence thick enough to feel. In the imagination of the Norse, cold was not simply unpleasant. Cold was power. Cold could stop a river, steal a harvest, slow a heartbeat, and turn a path home into a blank expanse where even the brave might vanish. That respect for winter's force is woven into how Niflheim is understood. It is not a villain, it is a reality. From Niflheim comes Hvergelmir, the roaring spring that churns beneath the deepest roots of Yggdrasil. This well is more than water, it is a source. From it pour the Elivagar, the primordial rivers that existed before seas had names. These rivers carry an ancient venom in the myths, not because they are morally evil, but because they are raw and untamed, the kind of water that belongs to the beginning of time, when life had not yet learned how to exist. The Elivagar flowed out into Ginnungagap long before Midgard had shores. As they traveled, they cooled and froze, laying down layer after layer of rime. Over ages beyond counting, the ice spread, building a silent mass in the emptiness. This was creation waiting to happen, but not yet alive. Then came warmth. From Muspelheim drifted sparks, embers carried outward, bright flecks of movement crossing the void. Where that heat reached the frozen rivers, something changed. Ice began to loosen, frost began to drip, mist rose in the gap. And from that meeting of opposites, the first life emerged. In the Norse telling, the first being was Ymir, born from meltwater and heat, shaped by ice, stirred by flame. This is why Niflheim matters so much. Without it, there is no form for fire to work upon. Without cold, heat has nothing to melt, nothing to transform. The Norse cosmos does not begin with purity. It begins with tension. Niflheim is the realm that provides the boundaries. It hardens. It preserves. It slows. It makes things hold together long enough to become something. Even after the world was shaped from Ymir's body, even after seas rolled and mountains rose, Niflheim remained what it always was, an ancient source of cold and a reminder that stillness is part of the universe's design. Within the living system of Yggdrasil, Niflheim holds one of the great roots. The world tree is often spoken of as strong, but it is never described as invulnerable. At its foundations, the tree is constantly challenged by forces that do not rage or roar, but simply persist. Beneath the root that reaches toward Niflheim lies Hvergelmir, churning and cold, and near it dwells Nidhogr, the gnawing serpent or dragon who chews at the root. Nidhogr is one of the most unsettling presences in Norse mythology because it never rushes. It does not strike in a dramatic moment. It does not announce itself with thunder. It simply gnaws. This is a perfect symbol for what Niflheim represents. Not sudden destruction, but slow erosion. Not fire's immediate consumption, but time's patient wearing away. The Norse understood that the world does not only end in battle, it also ends in quiet, ordinary decay. In this way, Niflheim is not only about cold, it is about inevitability. About the way all things, even the strongest, are eventually altered. About the way silence can be more final than any scream. There is another reason Niflheim feels so heavy in the myths. Mist. Mist hides shape, it steals distance. It turns a familiar path into a blank uncertainty. In Niflheim, the air itself seems to refuse clarity. This is important, because Norse myth often treats knowledge as precious and costly. In realms like Asgard, knowledge is pursued. In places like Jotunheim, knowledge is guarded. In Niflheim, knowledge is simply hard to keep. You cannot see far. You cannot hear well. You cannot easily tell where you are. Niflheim becomes the outer edge of certainty. And that is why it is feared, not as moral punishment, but as an environment where the mind loses its grip. Niflheim is often associated with hell, and it is true that the realms touch in the cosmological imagination, but Niflheim is more elemental. Helheim is a destination shaped by the human experience of death, where the dead gather and continue in a subdued existence. Niflheim is the older cold beneath that idea, the primordial chill that makes endings possible at all. If Helheim is the realm of those who have died, Niflheim is the realm that reminds the living that dying is part of nature. There is no grand court here, no promise of reward, no theatrical torment, only the quiet truth that warmth does not last forever. And yet Niflheim is not only an image of ending, it also belongs to beginnings. Because the Norse cosmos is cyclic. Creation came from the meeting of ice and fire. And the final transformation at Ragnarök also involves ice and fire moving again. In the prophecies, winters deepen before the end. Fimbulwinter arrives, long and merciless, pressing Midgard into hunger and despair. This is not a random disaster. It is the old power of Niflheim asserting itself, stretching outward, reminding the worlds that the balance has shifted. Cold returns. It takes longer each year for spring to come. It becomes harder to remember the sun. And this too has meaning. In Norse thought, struggle is not an accident, it is the condition of existence. Midgard is beautiful not because it is safe, but because it persists. Asgard is noble not because it is eternal, but because it stands despite knowing it will fall. Niflheim reinforces that worldview. It is the realm that does not compromise, it does not negotiate, it simply is. That constancy makes it terrifying, and also honest. The Norse did not imagine that life could exist without hardship. The cold was part of their reality. It killed livestock, froze rivers, trapped ships, and turned ordinary travel into a deadly gamble. Niflheim takes that lived experience and elevates it into cosmic principle. Cold is the universe's restraint. It slows what would otherwise burn too fast. It preserves what would otherwise decay into chaos. It forces beings to prepare. It gives meaning to warmth. And because it is constant, it becomes a kind of quiet teacher. When you picture Niflheim, you might imagine endless ice fields, gray skies, and drifting fog. You might imagine the sound of wind moving across empty space. You might imagine a place where footsteps fade quickly, swallowed by frost. But the deeper image is simpler. Niflheim is the realm that makes you feel the edge of life. The moment when a fire's glow feels precious. The moment when shelter matters. The moment when you understand, in your bones, that survival is not guaranteed. That understanding is one of the strongest threads in Norse mythology. Not despair, not hopelessness, but clarity. A recognition that time is limited, and therefore action matters. So Niflheim stands at the edge of the Nine Realms as a reminder. It reminds Asgard that even gods cannot escape the cold of fate. It reminds Midgard that even strong communities can be undone by winter if they become careless. It reminds Jotunheim that wilderness itself has boundaries, that even giants can be stilled. It reminds all realms that everything made will one day return to stillness. And yet it also carries the memory of the beginning. Because in the very first moment when ice met fire, Niflheim helped create life. This is the paradox that makes the realm so powerful. The cold that ends things is the same cold that shaped the first form. The mist that hides things is the same mist that rose when the void first changed. The stillness that frightens mortals is also a kind of foundation beneath all movement. Niflheim does not demand attention, but it commands respect. It is ancient. It is quiet. It is patient. And beneath the lowest roots of Yggdrasil, where the spring churns and the serpent gnaws, Niflheim endures, not as an enemy of life, but as the deep, unchanging reminder that every flame, no matter how bright, is borrowed for only a while. At the opposite extreme of the frozen silence of Niflheim lies Muspelheim, a realm defined by fire, motion, and unrestrained force. Muspelheim is not merely hot. It is primal heat, the kind that existed before form, before boundary, before restraint. In Norse mythology, it is one of the oldest realms, present before the shaping of the world and essential to its creation. Where Niflheim embodies stillness and preservation, Muspelheim embodies movement and transformation. In the beginning, when Ginnungagap stretched empty between cold and flame, Muspelheim burned at one edge of existence. Sparks drifted outward from it, carried across the void. When those sparks met the frozen rivers flowing from Niflheim, ice melted, vapors rose, and the conditions for life emerged. Creation did not arise from balance alone, but from collision. Muspelheim provided the energy that made change possible. Without fire, ice would have remained inert. Without heat, nothing would have moved. This establishes Muspelheim's role from the very start. It is not a realm of destruction alone, it is a realm of ignition. Muspelheim is described as a land of fire and light so intense that no mortal being could survive there. The ground itself burns. The air shimmers with heat. Rivers of molten flame cut through the land, and sparks fall like ash from an endless sky. There are no gentle regions in Muspelheim. Everything exists in motion or dissolution. This environment shapes the beings who dwell there. Stability is impossible. Only endurance or annihilation exist. Muspelheim is inhabited by fire giants, beings born of flame and heat. They are not numerous, but they are formidable. Their nature aligns with the realm itself, volatile, destructive, and unstoppable once set in motion. Unlike the giants of Jotunheim, who often interact with gods through cunning, rivalry, or uneasy kinship, the fire giants are more singular in purpose. They are agents of burning change. They do not bargain. They do not integrate. They wait. At the heart of Muspelheim stands Surtur, the most fearsome of the fire giants. Surtur wields a flaming sword brighter than the sun. He stands watch at the border of Muspelheim, guarding its edge from intrusion. His role is not merely that of a ruler. He is a threshold, the embodiment of a force that must remain contained until the proper moment arrives. Surtur's presence is deeply tied to prophecy. At Ragnarök, he will march forth from Muspelheim, sword blazing, and set the world ablaze. His flames will consume Asgard, Midgard, and the roots of Yggdrasil itself. Fire will sweep across creation, undoing what was once shaped from Ymir's body. This is not portrayed as senseless destruction. It is fulfillment. In Norse cosmology, creation is not permanent possession. Matter is borrowed, shaped for a time, and then returned. Fire is the mechanism of that return. Surtur's flames do not exist to punish. They exist to complete a cycle that began when fire first met ice in Ginnungagap. This is why Muspelheim is essential, not antagonistic. Without the realm of fire, the cosmos would stagnate. Structures would endure beyond their purpose. Growth would decay into rot without release. Muspelheim ensures that endings occur. The gods of Asgard are keenly aware of Muspelheim's threat. They do not invade it. They do not attempt to conquer it. Some forces cannot be ruled. Instead, they prepare. Weapons are forged, alliances are tested. Fate tightens. Thor's hammer can strike fire giants. Odin's strategies account for them. Yet none of this prevents the inevitable. The gods are not ignorant of their limits. This awareness shapes their courage. Fire in Norse mythology is not simply destructive. It purifies, reshapes, and releases. Metal is forged through flame. Land is renewed through burning. Old growth gives way to new. Muspelheim embodies this truth on a cosmic scale. Its heat strips existence down to essence. What survives does so because it can. What does not was never meant to last. Muspelheim cannot exist alone. Without Niflheim, fire would consume endlessly. Without Muspelheim, ice would freeze the cosmos into silence. The 9 realms arise from their tension. Even at the end, when fire and frost march together at Ragnarök, their union mirrors the moment of creation itself. The end resembles the beginning. This cyclical structure lies at the heart of Norse belief. As Ragnarök unfolds, Muspelheim's role becomes unavoidable. The fire giants cross Bifrost, shattering it beneath their weight. Flames race across the worlds. The sky darkens with smoke. Seas boil. Surtur strikes the final blow. The world burns. And then, after fire has consumed what was formed, the flames subside. From the ashes, a renewed world emerges. Green land rises from the sea. Survivors step into the light. Life begins again. Muspelheim does not end the story. It resets it. At the far edge of existence, beyond frost and flame, the cycle turns once more. And Muspelheim, ancient and relentless, fulfills its role, not as a villain, but as the force that ensures no beginning is without an end. Beyond the warmth of life and far from the clash of gods and giants lies Helheim, the realm of the dead. Helheim is not a place of fire or torment. It is quiet. It is cold, but not with the primal severity of Niflheim. Its stillness is emotional rather than elemental. In Norse mythology, Helheim represents the natural end of life, not a punishment, not a reward, but a destination shaped by inevitability. To understand Helheim, one must first set aside later ideas of moral judgment tied to death. The Norse did not divide the afterlife into good and evil in the way many modern traditions do. Death was not a courtroom. It was a continuation of existence under different conditions. Helheim is ruled by Hel, a being whose nature reflects the realm she governs. Hel is the daughter of Loki and the giantess Angerboda, making her kin to Fenrir and Jormungandr. Her appearance is striking and unsettling. She is described as half alive and half corpse, one side vibrant, the other decayed. This duality is not meant to inspire fear alone. It symbolizes the boundary between life and death, the state of transition rather than finality. When the gods learned of Loki's children and the roles they would play in Ragnarök, they took action. Fenrir was bound. Jormungandr was cast into the sea. Hel was sent to rule over the dead in the depths beneath Yggdrasil. There, she was given authority over those who die of sickness, age, or misfortune, those whose deaths were not marked by battle or glory. Helheim is where most people go. This is a critical point often overlooked. Valhalla and Folkvanger receive warriors. Helheim receives everyone else. The realm itself mirrors this reality. Helheim is described as vast and somber. Its halls are cold and shadowed. Its gates are high and difficult to cross. The river Gjöll flows at its boundary, crossed by a bridge guarded by the maiden Moldgud, who questions those who attempt to pass. Once crossed, there is no return. This is not cruelty, it is boundary. Helheim is not a place of judgment, but of separation. The living and the dead occupy different realms for a reason. To cross freely between them would unravel the order of existence. The experience of Helios is not described in vivid detail in surviving sources, And this absence is meaningful. The Norse did not imagine the afterlife as a place of indulgence or spectacle. It was quiet, subdued, and reflective. Those who arrive in Helheim retain memory, they retain identity, but they are removed from the struggles and urgencies of life. In this way, Helheim offers rest, not bliss, but release. This stands in contrast to Valhalla, where the dead fight and feast endlessly. Both realms reflect values rather than rewards. One honors endurance through action. The other honors endurance through acceptance. Hel herself is not portrayed as cruel or kind. She fulfills her role. She does not tempt the living. She does not punish the dead. She maintains order. Her authority is absolute within her realm, and even the gods respect its boundaries. One of the most famous myths involving Helheim concerns the death of Balder. After Balder is slain through deception and inevitability, the gods seek to retrieve him from Helheim. Odin sends Hermother to plead for his return. Hel agrees on one condition, that all things in the world must weep for Balder. Everything does, except one. A giantess, often identified as Loki in disguise, refuses. Because of this single failure, Balder remains in Helheim until after Ragnarök. This myth reinforces a central Norse truth. Death cannot be undone by desire alone. Even the gods are subject to its rules. Helheim is not immune to Ragnarök. When the final battle comes, Hel's realm releases the dead who will march with Loki against the gods. Even stillness eventually gives way to motion. Yet Helheim does not vanish entirely. After fire and flood reshape the world, death remains part of existence. The cycle continues. Life arises. Life ends. Helheim stands as the realm that makes this cycle complete. It is not feared because it is evil. It is respected because it is final. In the 9 realms, Helheim represents the truth no power escapes. Everything that begins must end. And in accepting that end, the Norse found meaning not in immortality, but in how one lives before the silence arrives. Beneath the deepest roots of Yggdrasil, beyond glory and flame, Helheim waits, patient, impartial, and inevitable. All stories within the 9 realms bend, slowly and inevitably, toward a single horizon. This is Ragnarök, the fate of the gods, the unraveling of the worlds, and the closing of a cosmic cycle that began when fire first met ice. Ragnarök is not a sudden catastrophe, it is a long approach. In Norse mythology, the end does not arrive without warning. It announces itself through signs, fractures, and moral decay. Bonds weaken, oaths break, kin turn against kin, the natural order begins to fail. The sun darkens, the moon disappears, stars fall from the sky. Winters lengthen into an unbroken cold known as Fimbulwinter. Snow falls from every direction, crops fail. Hunger spreads across Midgard. Humanity, already fragile, begins to fracture under the weight of survival. This collapse is not caused by monsters alone. It is caused by imbalance. The values that once held the worlds together erode. Honor gives way to desperation. Loyalty fractures. Even the gods feel the strain of time pressing inward. Odin knows what is coming. He has always known. Much of his rule in Asgard has been shaped by this knowledge. His gathering of the slain, his relentless pursuit of wisdom, his bargains and sacrifices, all of it is preparation, not for victory, but for resistance. Because Ragnarök is not a battle that can be won. It is an ending that must be met. As the signs intensify, ancient restraints fail. Fenrir, the great wolf bound by deception and fear, breaks free. His jaws stretch impossibly wide, one scraping the sky, the other dragging along the earth. His hunger is not just physical, it is symbolic, the hunger of chaos long denied. Jormungandr releases its tail and rises from the sea. The oceans churn and spill across Midgard. Poison fills the air. Land that once sustained life is swallowed by water. Loki breaks his bonds. Once a trickster, once a companion to the gods, Loki now stands as an agent of unraveling. He does not lead out of malice alone, but out of alignment with inevitability. The world no longer needs clever disruption, it needs release. From Helheim march the dead, no longer at rest but called into motion. Even the still realms must answer the final summons. From Muspelheim come the fire giants, led by Surtur, whose sword burns with the heat that once ignited creation. Bifrost shatters beneath their advance, collapsing the final connection between worlds. The 9 realms do not fall one by one. They fall together. The final battlefield forms on the plain of Yggdrasil, where gods, giants, monsters, and the dead converge. This is not a clash of good and evil. It is a convergence of forces that have always existed in tension. Odin faces Fenrir. The wolf devours the Allfather, fulfilling prophecy. Wisdom, foresight, and preparation do not grant escape, they grant meaning. Thor confronts Jormungandr. He strikes the serpent dead, but staggers only 9 steps before collapsing, poisoned by its venom. Strength holds the line but cannot transcend cost. Freyr faces Surtus. Unarmed, having given away his sword long ago, he falls beneath the fire giant's blade. Fertility and peace do not survive the final burning, but they are not erased from memory. Tyr and Garm destroy one another. Loki and Heimdall strike each other down. Even the gods who represent order, vigilance, and courage are not spared. The world burns. Surtur's flames sweep across the 9 realms. Mountains collapse, forests ignite, the sky splits, the seas boil. Yggdrasil trembles. The world tree does not escape unharmed. Its branches crack, its roots shudder. Yet it does not collapse entirely. Even at the end, something holds. When the fire fades and the waters recede, silence follows. This silence is not emptiness. From the sea rises a renewed world, green, fertile, and cleansed. Rivers flow again, crops grow without sowing, the air is clear. The cycle continues. Some gods survive. Baldur returns from Helheim, restored not as a ruler of war, but as a symbol of renewal. Hother returns with him. Together they preside over a changed world, one no longer driven by preparation for catastrophe. Vidar and Vali remain. The sons of Thor inherit his hammer. Memory carries forward. Humanity survives as well. Lif and Lifthrasir emerge from their shelter within Yggdrasil, having endured fire and flood. From them, new generations arise. Humanity does not reset, it continues. This survival is crucial. The Norse did not imagine Ragnarök as annihilation. They imagined it as transformation. Everything that was rigid breaks. Everything that was essential remains. The 9 realms do not disappear. They change. Asgard does not return as a fortress. It returns as a meeting place. Midgard is no longer defined by constant threat. The forces of chaos are no longer restrained, but neither do they dominate. Balance is restored through release rather than control. This is the final lesson of Norse mythology. The universe is not saved by preventing endings. It is sustained by accepting them. The gods are not immortal because they live forever. They matter because they face the end with open eyes. In this worldview, courage is not the absence of fear. It is action taken in spite of certainty. Ragnarök does not diminish the 9 realms. It completes them. And in the quiet that follows, as the world breathes again beneath the surviving branches of Yggdrasil, the stories do not end. They begin anew. If you've enjoyed this journey through the 9 realms, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Circadian History. New stories arrive often, and each one is meant to help you slow down, settle in, and drift a little deeper into the past. For now, get comfortable. Let the world grow quiet again.